if you ban glyphosate overnight, or if you got rid of it, or if somebody else cut off our supply, it would destroy the American food system. And
how crazy is that statement? The American foods, the entire system is based on using a poison.
Right.
You know what glyphosate is? Glyphosate is that stuff they spray on all our food, right? And it causes cancer. And the people, the manufacturers of glyphosate have paid out billions of dollars to people who they've given cancer through their glyphosate. And it's, if you use it at home, it's called Roundup, and it causes cancer. And that's a for sure thing. And they spray it on all our food, which is why Americans have chronic illness. There's a big reason why Americans have chronic illness, and they probably think they have gluten allergies when they're really just being poisoned. In fact, RFK used to say this. This is what he used to say. This is what he said in 2024. He said that herbicide glyphosate is one of the likely culprits in America's chronic disease epidemic, much more widely used here than in Europe. Shockingly, much of our exposure comes from its use as a desiccant on wheat, not as a herbicide. From there, it goes straight into our bodies. My USDA will ban that practice. Look up what the word desiccant means. I think it means they use it to dry out the wheat. I'm pretty sure that's what it means. Is that what it means?
I'll look up.
You can look it up. But if you want to know what glyphosate's really about,
could not be any worse news. Unfortunately, it does appear that this executive order will provide at least some.
So Trump did an executive order. And Trump grants immunity to glyphosate manufacturers under the Defense Product. So now you can't. So Trump's executive order says you can't sue the people who give you cancer. We're going to protect the makers of glyphosate. We're going to protect them to keep spraying it on all your food. And if you get a court to agree with you that they gave you cancer and they knew it, we're going to give them a shield from that kind of prosecution. That's what they're doing. Just so you know. And here's the weird thing is that, so Thomas Massie is on this, and he said, this week I will introduce the No Immunity for Glyphosate Act to undo the recent executive order which promotes glyphosate Roundup and insulates manufacturers from liability. So they're doing for the makers of this poison glyphosate that you don't have a choice to eat. They're giving them the immunity shield that the government gives to vaccine manufacturers. So if it's so safe and effective, why can't you sue them if you get hurt? Okay. So here's what Thomas Massie said.
This government is under siege. All three branches of this government is under siege by lobbyists and lawyers from a German company named Bayer. They spent over $9 million lobbying the executive branch and the legislative branch so that they don't have to be liable for any damages that their herbicide causes, otherwise known as Roundup.
So he is introducing legislation. Now, this is what RFK initially said after, let me see, what was the date of this? Do I have it? So this was February 22nd, just a couple days ago. This is what he said to Trump. This is what RFK said. He said, I will always tell the American people the truth. Pesticides and herbicides are toxic by design, engineered to kill living organisms. When we apply them across millions of acres and allow them into our food systems, we put Americans at risk. Chemical manufacturers have paid tens of billions of dollars to settle cancer claims linked to their products, and many agricultural communities report elevated cancer rates and chronic illnesses. Unfortunately, our agricultural system depends heavily on these chemicals. The U.S. represents 4% of the world's population, yet we use roughly 25% of its pesticides. If these inputs disappeared overnight, crop yields would fall. Food prices would surge, and Americans would experience a massive loss of farms, even beyond what we are witnessing today. The consequences would be disastrous. So he's saying, we got to keep poisoning you. So he's saying, hey, glyphosate poisons you, but turns out we got to keep poisoning you because if we stopped poisoning you, it would be bad for business. That's what he's saying. This is what he said initially. Now I'm going to show you what he said on Joe Rogan today in a second. I support President Trump's executive order to bring agricultural chemical production back to the United States and end our near total reliance on adversarial nations. His executive order protects two pillars of national strength, our defense readiness and our food supply. When hostile actors control critical inputs, they directly threaten the security of the American people. The Trump administration will secure these supply chains to. So he went from saying, hey, I'm going to ban this, to saying, hey, turns out it's okay if we give you cancer because it's good for business. And for our it's if we give our own people cancer, that somehow helps our national defense. Hey, how are you going to defend the United States? Well, we're going to start giving our people cancer. Huh. President Trump did not build our current system. He inherited it. For decades, Washington designed modern agricultural policymakers, wrote farm policy, directed research dollars, structured subsidies and crop insurance. And so he's just, his hands are cuffed. He can't do anything. He can't stop us from giving you cancer because the system's already in place. Yeah, that's why we elected you, to change that system. So he goes on to say, those deliberate choices locked farmers into chemical dependence and prioritized short-term output over long-term soil vitality and human health. And we're going to keep doing it. We are now changing course without destabilizing the food supply. Alongside the USDA Secretary Rollins, we are accelerating the transition to regenerative agriculture by expanding farming systems so he's going to tell you all the good stuff they're doing, but at the same time, yeah, we're going to still keep giving you cancer. So I've met with hundreds of farmers. So that's what he was saying then. So he's trying to pretend that they're still looking out for you, even though the executive order says we're going to keep giving you cancer because it's good for business. Well, with President Trump's leadership, we are securing critical supply chains, confronting the health risks embedded in our current system, and deploying every available tool to blah, 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 blah. Okay, so that's what he said initially. He's like, yeah, I'm going to have to go. We got to do it because it's going to hurt our business. That's really why that's what he said. So now he went on Joe Rogan today. So here's what he said. Here's what he said today. Hang on.
I wanted to ask you about pesticides. So what was the recent ruling on glyphosate?
That was an EO, which is an executive order from the president saying that we're going to make the ingredients for glyphosate in this country and for elemental phosphorus. And, you know, I've spent 40 years fighting pesticides. I was part of the trial team on the Monsanto case, which was the team that, we won 3 cases in a row and then got an $11 billion settlement with Monsanto, which is now Bayer, by the end of our trial.
So RFK used to be the guy suing these chemical makers and winning. He got an $11 billion settlement from when Monsanto made glyphosate, and then Monsanto got sold to Bayer. And now Bayer is the maker of glyphosate. And before, when it was Monsanto, he sued them, won 3 times, and got them to settle for $11 billion for giving people cancer. And now he's part of an administration that is going to give a liability shield so that guys like him can't sue the manufacturers of glyphosate anymore. That's what the administration he's a part of is currently doing. Okay, so let's hear what he says.
Bayer, by the end of our trial, Bayer owned Monsanto. But, pesticides are poison. They're designed to kill all life. It's not a good thing to have in your food. So it's not something that I was particularly happy with. Let me put it that way mildly. But I also understand the president's point of view. The president didn't create the system. He's dealing with a problem that was created long before, over the past 60 years, when, through federal policies and subsidies and the management of farming in this country, the agricultural management, we have addicted our farmers to these pesticides, and particularly glyphosate. Glyphosate is the foundational pesticide of our food production system. So 97% of corn in this country is produced with glyphosate and can't be produced without it. 98%, you could do it. You could change it. There's organic corn producers in this country. It's like 3%. 98% of soy is produced with glyphosate. If you ban glyphosate overnight, or if you got rid of it, or if somebody else cut off our supply, it would destroy the American food system. And
how crazy is that statement? The American foods, the entire system is based on using the poison.
Right. The farmers don't like it. Let me just explain what the EO did. Right now, according to the industry reports, 99% of our glyphosate comes from China. Oh, the Pentagon and others said this is an extreme national security vulnerability, that China controls the U.S. food system. And we can't afford to let that happen. If we got in some kind of tangle with them, they could literally cut off our food supply overnight and cripple the country. And so that's what the president was responding to. But we all know we've got to transition off of glyphosate. We all know that. And the farmers hate it. They're now starting to see these.
Where's the plan for the transition?
These chemical-resistant weeds, so that can't be treated with glyphosate. Now it's predictable. Two, they hate the inputs. It's cost them a lot of money. Three, the foreign countries won't allow them to export. Like Europe doesn't allow, most European countries don't allow the export of our crops to their countries.
Well, how are they doing it?
They use less glyphosate than
What a great question, Joe. Did you see he kind of stunned? RFK didn't see that question coming. Well, if Europe doesn't use the glyphosate, how come they get to be producing vegetables and crops for their people without it? Why can't we can't do it, but they can do it? How are they doing it? Well, let's listen.
Stops to their countries.
Well, how are they doing it?
They use less glyphosate than we do.
But they
use some. They use it, but our system is all Roundup Ready corn and Roundup Ready soy,
right.
And so they don't use it like we do over here.
Ideally, that we would transition away from that, right?
Yeah, and it's also they know it's destroying their soil, and they're all suffering from runoff. It destroys the microbiome in the soil, and because of that, the soil can't. You don't get water infiltration in the soil, and so the soil then runs off, and it's destroying their farms. It's not sustainable. Everybody knows that.
We had Will Harris from White Oak Pastures on here, and he showed us the literal line in the river between his organic farm and the next door neighbor's farm. We could see this clear line where all the runoff is going into the river.
Yeah, but Will Harris will also tell you the same thing that I said, is that what he did is very hard, and it's not
20 years.
What?
Took him 20 years.
It took him 20 years, and it's not applicable to every farmer. And
right.
He understands the problem too. We all understand that this is a huge problem. So the president was dealing with national security, and they did something that I really don't like, which is to support. There's a lawsuit that's now before the Supreme Court, but in the lower court they supported is asked for federal preemption. So that would mean that if the federal label says that this is safe, that these state lawsuits now cannot be brought. So it would throw out a lot of the state lawsuits, and it effectively gives them immunity from liability.
So what he's saying is that the president's executive order says that no matter what the state law says, the federal government is going to overrule the state and local governments and their laws. So if the feds say, hey, glyphosate is safe, doesn't matter what the court says, no matter if you win in front of a judge or a jury, doesn't matter what the state laws say, Doesn't matter what the state legislatures say. The federal government's just going to come and overrule you, which again is another thing that's the exact opposite of what conservatives are supposed to believe in. Conservatives always believe in that the laws made closest to home are the best, and that you shouldn't give your right to legislation and to rule over yourselves to the feds. And that's Donald Trump is the exact opposite of a conservative. The exact opposite. He's the exact opposite of what he ran on MAGA. And there's RFK Jr. bending himself in a pretzel, trying to say, yeah, we got to keep giving you cancer. Yeah, because it's, our system's built that way. Yeah, well, let's unwind that system. We got to keep giving everyone cancer, and we got to keep stopping people from suing when they get cancer. So now not only are we going to keep giving you cancer, but we're going to take your right away to get compensated when you get cancer and you got nowhere else to go to eat. Every piece of corn, 97% of the corn in America filled with glyphosate. Soybeans filled with and that stuff's in everything. I don't know how you get it. I get my pasta directly from Italy that I make at home. And there's a restaurant down the street I go to get pasta. They get their pasta directly from Italy. It doesn't have glyphosate on it. But it's in everything. It's going to be in your bread. It's going to be in your baby formula. It's going to be in your corn. Anything that corn is in, anything that soybeans in, and soybeans is in everything. And there he is bending himself in a pretzel saying, yeah, this is horrible. But we got to keep doing it because that's the way it goes. Because the farmers hate it. You mean the big agri companies hate it? No, they don't. The small farmers hate it. So Toby Rogers, he says, this is some hell of a twisted logic. Glyphosate is a carcinogen. Right now, 99% of this carcinogen comes from China. Therefore, we, the people in the United States, have to make the carcinogen here that we all know we've got to transition off of. So we know we have to transition off this carcinogen, but it's really bad that another country makes the carcinogen. So we got to make our own carcinogen to give to our own people. Somehow make it make sense. Make it make sense. Now, you know, if it was up to RFK, he probably would change it, but it's not up to him. So this is up to Trump. Trump did an executive order. And so it's like, hey, either you go along with the administration or you quit. And so I'm sure his thinking is, well, if I'm not here, nothing good is going to get done, because nothing good is going to get done. It's the first time we've ever had the head of the HHS that the big pharma and big agriculture had an allergic reaction to. It's the first time ever in my lifetime. Can you remember the last time the head of HHS or the FDA or the CDC was an actual adversary to big pharma and big agriculture? I can't remember. So they have gotten good stuff done over there. They have gotten the recommendation from 72 vaccines for a baby down to 35 and on parity with Denmark. They gotten rid of the mandate for the hepatitis B vaccine to be the first shot you give a baby, which never made any sense. So there are good things happening. And they would not have happened if anybody else was in that position. So I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. This is horrible. And this is the kind of compromise a guy like this is being forced to make by Donald Trump, or else he can't get anything good done. Now, some people will make the case, well, he should resign and make a big stink out of it. There's a lot of merit to that. I understand that argument. I'm not saying it's wrong. Maybe he should. Maybe he should stand up against it. Maybe he should bring it to the Supreme. Maybe he should drop out of the administration, file a lawsuit, and go to the Supreme Court and win. Maybe that's what he should do. Probably, maybe. But I see the calculation he's making. You can agree with it or disagree with it. I kind of disagree with it. Anomaly says, they keep saying we can't just instantly stop using glyphosate. Okay, so then where's your plan to wean us off it? They don't have one. Trump's executive order gave them new legal immunity shield and a production boost. Stop the BS. This isn't a plan to wean us off it. This is a plan to keep us using it. And now the people who get cancer from it can't even get compensation for it as they could in the past. So it's gotten worse now. RFK should resign. I think he should. But what do I know? But that's what so this is Casey Means. White House advisor Casey Means says the recent glyphosate executive order is extremely disappointing. But the HHS is working hard to address it. Okay. You mean go along with it? So this guy says Casey Means and Bobby Kennedy are either complete idiots or unmitigated snake oil salesmen. The reason farmers are dependent on glyphosate pesticides is that the seed and pesticide oligopoly led by Bayer has choked innovation and competition out of this sector for 2 decades, trapping farmers. As a recent Deloitte report on the agrochemical industry said, the strategies deployed by industry incumbents today are better described as capturing rather than selling value. In other words, Bayer et al. Trapped farmers into using pesticides that give farmers cancer so they can charge farmers an arm and a leg for them. And now they want immunity from lawsuits so they can keep charging farmers an arm and a leg for their cancer-causing pesticide. And Callie Means and Bobby Kennedy's solution for this situation is a little NIH grant program. Really? These people are either idiots or they think their followers are idiots. So Tara says, now all the brain-dead Maha zombies will cheer because Bobby said he wasn't happy with the executive order, even though he released a 10-paragraph statement standing behind it. And I read you most of it. This fraud didn't even mention one word about vaccines or the COVID vaccine on the entire 2-hour podcast. That is super disappointing. Super, super duper disappointing. What a joke. There's no pushback. It should have been a defining moment where he resigned. Trump protects farmers too much. Farmers using glyphosate shouldn't be admired. The only solution is to ban it entirely, let things fall where they be. I'm all for that. And now, by the end of this segment, I'm coming around to he should have resigned over this and immediately filed a lawsuit sticking up for people to sue when they get cancer against glyphosate. Hey, Decensored News says, were you telling the truth when you said on August 2024 that Trump will protect Americans' freedoms, get us out of the wars, rebuild the middle class, and make America healthy again? It was total 180 from what you were saying in the weeks and months before that. Okay, well, here's Toby Rogers one more. He says, I strongly doubt that the alternative to Roundup is laser-guided weed control. I imagine the alternative to Roundup is switching from monocropping to permaculture principles that emphasize crop rotation and planting complementary species that naturally suppress weed growth. Polycultures disrupt the conditions that allow any single weed species to dominate, while deep-rooted perennials outcompete opportunistic annuals for nutrients and light. Cover cropping between seasons smothers weeds before they establish in strategic ground cover. Bare soil, whether living mulch, wood chips, or intercropped legumes, denies bare soil to the plants you don't want. None of this requires a herbicide or a laser. It requires a fundamentally different relationship between the farmer and the land, and one that works ecological succession rather than perpetually fighting it. So he's telling you that there's other ways to do this. That's basically what that says. There's other ways to get rid of weeds. There's other ways to do this. You don't need to do this. And this is just another huge disappointment from the Trump administration to anybody who's in Maha. And to see RFK, yeah, okay, so he says, I'm disappointed. What are you doing? You're going along with it. You're defending it. We got to do this. We got to keep giving you cancer because that's the system. Why not? Do you say the same thing about, we got to keep giving kids vaccines? That's the system. We got to keep giving you experimental medical treatments with no safety studies done with a placebo. We just get the system. So this is a huge disappointment. I don't look forward to watching that Joe Rogan episode with him at all. This is it's a bit of a heartbreak, and I wish he would resign and then immediately sue at the behalf of American citizens to recover damages when they're given cancer from glyphosate, like he used to before he was HHS secretary. What he used to do. Okay, now, all right. So if you'd like to hear my jokes about this, and I got them, come see me at the LA Comedy Store April